So as I mentioned, today is called both Passion Sunday and Palm Sunday. As the Sunday that leads into Holy Week, we recognise it as Palm Sunday, remembering that moment, recalling the moment when Jesus is welcomed into Jerusalem, heralded as a king, as the one who's going to come and take possession of Jerusalem, the holy city, and through that Israel. And to the understanding, that acclamation that people were giving him was that he would be the one now to free them from the Roman occupation. And of course, just a week later, Jesus is being crucified. Less than a week later, he's being crucified. And so we call this Passion Sunday as well, because we have the gospel of the Passion that we've just heard, the story of Jesus' last moments. Today, we've heard from the gospel according to Mark. One of the things that distinguishes the different accounts of the Passion amongst the different Gospels are the words that Jesus says from the cross. Different Gospels record different things here. And there's the words of Jesus in Mark's Gospel today that I want to focus upon just briefly this morning. It's actually recorded and preserved to us in Aramaic, in the very words that Jesus would have used. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which is translated, my God, why have you deserted me? Or, my God, why have you abandoned me? Ever since we've heard those words, ever since Christians have prayed with the Gospel of Mark, listened to this proclamation, people throughout the centuries have found themselves both, I think, comforted and shocked by these words. Comforted because we have in this moment Jesus crying out as he hangs upon the cross in great suffering and agony, expressing his feeling, what he's going through, what he's experiencing at that moment. An experience that's perhaps quite shocking, but it's the sense that in this moment, in this extreme of suffering, Jesus appears to feel that his Father's abandoned him, deserted him. One of the things that this does point to is that Jesus knows what it's like to feel abandoned by God. And so throughout history, every time that people have felt deserted or abandoned in the midst of their suffering, when they've cried out to God, looking for hope in the midst of their trial, they find in a mysterious way that Jesus has gone before them because he too has made this cry. Jesus is not aloof from our suffering. He's not removed from what we go through. Jesus goes through and experiences an incredible degree of, the degree of physical suffering that's matched here as you hear this cry of anguish that comes deep from his heart, where he feels in some way that God his Father has deserted him. And that moment in particular, the extreme of that is hard for us to comprehend when we think about the fact that for the gospel, the entirety of the story up until this point, we see again and again how unimaginably close Jesus is with his Father. In John's gospel, he'll say, the Father and I are one. Again and again, he'll be praying to the one that he calls Father. We see this incredible intimacy that seems shattered at this moment as he hangs upon the cross. So we do know in this passage that Jesus stands in solidarity with us. That if we've ever felt abandoned, deserted, utterly alone, we know from this passage that Jesus is with us. But if this passage has provided comfort and solace to people throughout the centuries, it's also shocked people too, for the very reason that I've just been alluding to, that how is it that Jesus, the Son of God, the one who had this intimacy, this relationship with the Father, how could it possibly be that he's able to say, my God, why have you abandoned me? Was he not God? Did he not know? How is it that if he was truly God, how is it that he could not have felt in this moment that the Father was still with him? If he's really the divine Son, what is happening here? But we need to know and recognize that the words that he says upon the cross at this moment, my God, why have you abandoned me, is not just the cry of his heart, but it's also the words of a psalm. It's words of a song from Israel's story, from Israel's history. The Psalms are Israel's songbook, their prayer book, if you like. And we sang that psalm in the responsorial psalm today. And so the psalm starts with those words, my God, why have you abandoned me? But just like if I was to sing you a popular song, the first line of a popular song right now, and you would know the rest of the song, the people listening to Jesus, those who were followers of him, those who heard about this gospel, they would have known that as he said that first line, he was evoking the whole of the psalm. He was calling to mind not just the refrain, if you like, but the whole song. And so it's really important that we understand what the rest of the song says. It is a song of dereliction. It's a song of the psalmist, the one writing, the one singing the song, is saying, I can't believe that you've left me, you've abandoned me. But it goes on to take something of the character of a prophecy, because the psalmist, the one writing it, it's attributed to King David, never died the death that we're talking about, that is talked about in the psalm, but it seems to refer to something like a crucifixion. The psalm will go on to say, why have you gouged nails in my hands? I have holes. Goes on to say, I feel like I'm being gnawed by wild beasts. It's this moment of describing the suffering of somebody who's dying, perhaps on a cross, some 1,000 years perhaps before the time of Jesus. But the psalm goes on, after going on in that vein, from a cry of abandonment to a prediction of suffering for the man, the just man who's dying, we also have this moment as the psalm shifts towards the end of the psalm and becomes a song, strangely, of praise. I will tell of your name, the psalmist is talking to God. I will tell of your name to my brothers and sisters. In the midst of the congregation, I will praise you. We need to understand then that these words, Jesus is saying, these words are on my lips. On the cross, you can only get the first line out, but what follows is also on his lips. I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise you. All you offspring of Jacob, glorify him. Stand in awe of him, all you offspring of Israel. And here's the most important line, and expresses Jesus' trust and confidence in the Father. For he, God, did not despise the affliction of the afflicted. He did not hide his face from me, but heard when I cried to him. Jesus is not just simply crying from the cross, I feel abandoned in this moment. He's making an act of trust, saying, I cannot feel you, Father. I experience myself as cut off from you, but I know that's not true. I know that's a lie. That in this moment, as Jesus bears the sin of the world upon himself, what he experiences is not the truth, it's not reality. He experiences himself as being cut off, but he says here through the psalm, I know you have not turned your face from me. I know you are with me, and I will praise you in this moment. And then the psalm finishes with this. All the ends of the earth shall remember. All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord. All the families of the nations shall worship before him. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. Goes on to finish with, future generations will be told about the Lord and proclaim his deliverance to a people yet unborn. What the psalm finishes with, in other words, is not just Israel worshipping God, but all the peoples of the earth coming to worship God. That in this moment, through the death of this just man, the psalmist is saying what we will see mysteriously are all the peoples of the earth coming to worship God. And we see that being fulfilled in the gospel that we've just heard this morning, because we see at the very end of the passage, virtually the end of the gospel, the centurion, the non-Jew, the non-member of Israel, the Roman, the one who had been partially responsible for the death of Jesus, looking at him crucified and saying, that's the Son of God. The Psalm's prophecy, if you like, comes true in that moment as the first of the non-Jews, the first of the Gentiles, begins to worship God. This will come to its final fulfillment in the second coming of Jesus, when all the nations will gather to worship him. But we stand as heirs to that centurion's act of faith, that we are able to recognize in Jesus the crucified, the Son of God. as we gather on this Passion Sunday, as we celebrate Eucharist this morning, were to, as it were, stand at the foot of the cross too in anticipation of Good Friday and be able to say with the centurion, there is the Son of God who takes away the sins of the world.